Welcome to Potential Unlocked, a podcast devoted to helping you become the best version of yourself. This is the third name that we have had for this podcast. It started as Rue Fitness and then became probably the best fitness and nutrition podcast, and now Potential Unlocked. I went ahead and came up with another name because I wanted to expand beyond just fitness and nutrition in our conversations, because it is important that we involve mental, emotional health as well as we strive to become the best person we can be and open up those further conversations. On today's episode, we have with us life coach, my life coach, Will McGreal, who helped me through some rather dark times 6 to 9 months ago, and I continue to work with him today. We discuss the realities we create for ourselves and how we how we live in those. If you're interested in nutrition and fitness coaching, check out stackedcoaching.com. If you're interested in some therapy work or looking to discover new ways to ultimately become the best person you can be, check out willmcgreal.com. Enjoy the show. Hey everybody, what's up? I'm Bradley Schneller, and this is Will McGreal.
Hey.
Will is my... How would you describe yourself, Will? To me. What's your relationship to me? I mean, most people say therapist, but I feel like you're more than that.
Well, I'm not officially a therapist.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Right. And so all those medications, I would advise you to get a second opinion. Right. I am a life coach, trained. But really, I've been doing what I do for about 35 years. And it came to me while I was deep in music, the kind of music where it was classical music. And so I was hearing it in my head 16 hours a day, just nonstop. And in that period, it sort of clicked something inside of me and I became really, really intuitive.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I quit music doing that.
How many times have we seen each other? I don't know, 20-something times maybe?
Yeah. Maybe.
I feel like I'm still getting to know all the things that you've done in your entire life, which is wild. So before Will started music, which was roughly 16?
Yep, 16, 17.
16, 17. You were a child prodigy sailor.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far, but I sailed. I did. You know what? I took a lot of risks that could make me look like I was something, but no, I did some sailing of my own, on big boats. That was great. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I lived on the water. I grew up in New Orleans. This was on Lake Pontchartrain mostly, and then the Gulf. But I didn't really fit the whole New Orleans crazy scene, and so I went out to the water and just spent all my days out there.
What is the New Orleans crazy scene?
You know it. You could probably describe it better than I could. You talk about it all the time.
What I've been doing the last 10 days.
Right. I mean, we just finished Mardi Gras, a return to Mardi Gras, I might add.
A return to Mardi Gras.
Yeah, that was exciting. But no, so it was just always something. The New Orleans mentality was a little bit on the edge for me. I don't know why. Being a sensitive soul, maybe, I don't know. But so being out on the water was very meditative, and it was an incredible Zen environment for me,
right.
Really. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's the wind, there's the boat, which has its own sort of nervous system, really. Yeah. The wind, which has its own, and the water, which have their own fluid energy, and then there's me in the middle of all that. Wow, every day just contemplating those things was fantastic. It was beautiful.
Where along now, real quick, can you just give people, because I'm amazed at your life. I really am, all the things you've done. Can you give some people some quick highlights of your music career?
Well, yes. If I do this though, what's really going to come out is that they are almost crossing the line, but all kinds of opportunities. Like I pulled back, mainly because I think, even though I was very, very aggressive about pursuing music, and I had incredible luck in that, just unbelievable. I never really was a musician the way the guys that and the women, but mostly guys that I was competing with or working with. And so I always felt like I'm not really a member of this flock, and it was a little bit hard. So, but even within that realm, I got to apprentice with Antal Dorati with the Royal Philharmonic in London, as well as Iona Brown and Adrian Levine with the Academy St. Martin in the Fields. I was a piano student of Mary Pepin at the Guildhall in London. I was a conducting student at Tanglewood, where I had fantastic coaches and colleagues, just amazing.
We were just talking about one.
Yeah. So we would be visited by these great conductors who would come in and tell us what we could do better. And it was very exciting. It was very exciting. So
what made you decide? Well, there was something in between music and life coaching, right?
As a kid.
Oh, okay.
As a kid, I really wanted to something between music and life coaching.
You did software and stuff like that.
I did. That was that was later. So, but as a kid, I always was one of those contemplative, philosophical. I was always doing thought experiments. Normal. Right. Like we'll be on the Sandlot. What's if I had your eyes, would green look the same to me as it looks to you? Except, so then they would go on and then chase girls or be chased by girls, normal stuff. And I would still be sitting there going, yeah, but it's not just your eyes, is it? It's your brain. And I took these things very seriously.
Can we go off on a tangent real quick?
Yeah. Aren't we?
Yeah, always.
I don't think we're on a rail yet.
One thing that I've been thinking of a lot lately is people are always saying, or I hear this often, like,
yeah.
I wonder what it would be like to be that person or to feel what they feel or something like that. But I'm thinking if let's say you transplanted your consciousness to my body, like it would be an impossibility.
You couldn't do it.
You would never happen.
That's
right?
exactly. See, you were with me on the Sandlot.
You feel what you feel, so it doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. So, and I think that,
yeah.
but that conundrum, like banging up against the wall of that was exactly the kind of thing. This is first grade. So really kid-like here. But that's the kind of thing that got me thinking about the relationship between consciousness and reality, or my experience of reality. Like, what really is reality? From early on, I think one of the things that really motivated me, and this may be really germane to this kind of podcast, is that I went to a Catholic grammar school for the first 2 years, and typical. I mean, the nuns had sticks and hit us.
Where?
This in New Orleans, over in Kenner, right at St. Lawrence, I think the name of the school is.
Kenner?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, no, just yes, for a little while.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And they would make us stand on our tiptoes if they thought we had done something wrong. And I had horrible peeing in my pants experiences in front of the class. Like just shaming out of the world.
I did the same thing, by the way. I peed in my pants in front of the class. I mean, so let me go to the bathroom.
Exactly.
And so I didn't make it on time. I showed backup because the teacher thought I was lying. And I walked into the classroom with my pants down and my ankles and my underwear wet. And I'm like, I didn't make it.
I was able to draw the line a little bit earlier than that. I don't know why, but it was very embarrassing. And one of the things they did is they were always telling us why we should behave in a good manner because otherwise you go to hell. They couldn't tell us enough stories about how bad hell was. We didn't care. Right, it had no effect on us whatsoever. However, one day they decided, they brought all the nuns in. It was like this panel of nuns, including Mother Superior. And they told us, they wrote on the board, although I can't remember if we could even read at that point, but they wrote on the board the advantages and the pros of going to heaven. And they told us things like your body would be reglorified, which we didn't even know what that meant. But apparently, like people had lost a limb in the war. This was still post-war mentality that you would have your arm back in heaven, And we were like, so what? There'd be no pain in heaven, and pain never stopped us from riding our banana seat bikes down shell piles out by the lake. So there was nothing that really got us. And then the last thing, they kind of looked at each other. They were very excited, and they said, in heaven, and they smiled at each other and they looked at us, you will spend eternity with your family. And I remember immediately jerking my head and looking at the four guys in the back row with me of the classroom. Our hands went straight up and said, well, excuse me, sister. I'm sorry, sister. how long is this eternity? And and this is the thing that really propelled me into deep work into consciousness.
Did you know my greatest fear is eternity?
Well, mine was at that
infinity,
moment.
The thought of infinity or timelessness.
Okay, right? This is what we are on the same page here.
Yeah.
But the thing that propelled me though was not so much the concept of infinity, but that I would have to spend that concept with my sister, which I couldn't stand. Okay, and I thought, I can't even be in a room with her.
Still to this day?
Nah, I've gotten over it because of what followed, what was subsequent to this. But this idea that you're going to spend eternity, I remember asking priests, like, how long is eternity? This one priest made me pick up sand in the sandlot, and he said, count the grains. Now, you did what priest told you. I was never told to do anything like that, but you did what priest told you. And I'm counting the grains of sand. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And he pours the grains out. And I'm going 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. He goes, there are more days in eternity than there are grains in sand. And he waves his hand across the whole playground. Then there are grains of sand in this entire playground. That's not good. And how big is this eternity? And it just didn't make sense. And finally, somebody told me, public school teacher, we were not supposed to play with the publics, but I did. And the public school teacher said to me, oh, you worried about time after death? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, imagine there is no time or space. So what would there be? And he goes, I know, you're going to have to imagine it. And that was the beginning of, I think, probably the biggest change in consciousness for me. It had always been there, but this really made me do the work. And so I did a thought experiment. Is it okay to talk about this?
Yeah. I want to talk about it a little more.
All right. I did a thought experiment because I had just received a watch with a second hand for my birthday.
Right. And
so I had the second hand. I thought, I'm going to imagine that somebody's going to die at 7 p.m. It's this guy on my bed. And I took blankets and pillows. I don't know why I had to make it look real, but there's blankets and pillows to make it look like this guy. And he's going to die at 7 p.m. And so the seconds are ticking off, almost 7 p.m., 5, 4, 3, and then bam, he's dead. And that's when I started thinking about it. Okay, for me, he's been dead 23 seconds. But if there's no time and space, how long would he be dead in his consciousness? Well, it can't be 23 seconds because there's no time. For that matter, even a place that it's happening. But if I just stuck with the time problem, He's not been dead for 23 seconds. He's always been there in that state. If there's no time and space, right. There's no reference. It's like being totally in a room, in space where there's nothing to measure where you are. And then I kept thinking, I'm going to wait 30, 40 years. I didn't know when it was you die. I'm going to wait so long, and then I'm going to die. But meanwhile, he's been in no time and space. So when I arrive, no time has happened. He's always been there, and now I'm there. And then I thought, whoa, I'm there now. Like, I'm in that state already. And I had this sense of a sort of a duality, but one of which had to be a different consciousness. And I started to realize that this consciousness was pretty much organized around a physical, limited world. And I wanted access because I felt like there was part of me that had some type of reference or connection to this non-time and space thing. Because it wasn't just about non-time and space. It was difference in consciousness. And that was really important to me. And I was standing there looking out my window thinking about that. And my dad opens my door to the bedroom and he goes, hey. He goes, what's going on? I said, Dad. I didn't even turn around. I just kept looking out the window, very dramatic. I said, Dad, I'm in 2 places at once, knowing that was not quite right. 2 places at once. And he goes, yeah, did one of you take out the trash? And that was sort of my coming back to this world. But this idea of consciousness, to what extent does our consciousness play in the creation of this physical world? It had always been there, but now it was becoming obsessive for me, and that's all I thought about. So I spent all of my grammar school years, high school years, wanting to be a theoretical physicist. That was it. And I was bent on math. I did science. I got this grant as to enter college in physics. And I was all excited. And then I heard Beethoven's Emperor Concerto as a 16-year-old, in my senior year, 16. And I said, no, I can go further in music, in this consciousness with music than I could in physics. So.
But it didn't scratch the itch.
No. And then as a result, being in music sort of enlivened this mental awareness, and then I became highly psychic and intuitive, and it kind of answered a lot of questions, because a lot of my mentors or teachers, coaches would say, "We don't think you belong in music. We're not sure what you're doing here. You got here. We don't." It's an enigma. And so they didn't know quite how to treat me. So when this happened, they were like, "Oh, yeah,
right,
this makes sense. Finally. So go do this."
Why did you not go back to theoretical physics?
Because theoretical physics, as I started to understand, was incredibly mathematical, and my mind isn't that good, actually. Right. So I couldn't do the math.
They didn't have like a TI-83 back then?
No, but... Okay, that's okay. I can address that. I was the first person in high school to buy a Texas Instruments, a TI-50, and it looked like
TI-50,
right. And it was the size of it was like the size of a small computer now, and you wore it on your waist. It was huge, and in fact, we had a computer class which I was invited to join. There were a bunch of us that were in these math classes, and they said, Bill, that was my name then, instead of Will. They said, "Oh, you should come be in our computer class." And they did this thing where they were doing punch cards, and they did this thing called Splat. How many seconds before you open your parachute? I don't care. Just say it. It's so cool. 6.2 seconds. Oh, they all laugh. And then we ran it through, and it would go dot matrix printer. You're now at your elevation is 2,000 feet. You're descending at such and such rate per hour. And then splat. And it was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. And I thought, I don't really want to be involved in physics and math in such a way that we're playing with limited language about what's really going on. There was some other language about ultra consciousness that I was attracted to. And music was very close to it. Mm-hmm. But when I left music, I thought, no, I'm really going to pursue this. And I did. And I've been doing that since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the reasons I wanted to do this, I mean, this is going to be an open-ended series with you and I.
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay? You signed up for that?
Yeah.
Because, I came to you originally to deal with separation with my wife and my divorce. And in a sense, our sessions have grown into so much more. A lot of it has grown into finding my place in this world, what I was put on this earth to do.
Yeah. And do you think everybody has that, like a sense of purpose?
I don't know if everyone thinks that.
Yeah. Well, wait. What's been your experience with most of the world when they talk about life purpose? Do they even talk about it? Some of them.
No.
Yeah.
What about you? Have you?
No, me either. That's what I'm saying. Like it's a few. It's not as it doesn't seem to be an important integral part of their psyche.
Yeah.
Like they're not making decisions based on it.
Right. And it's so. It wasn't necessarily that. This podcast is not about you finding your purpose. For starters, it could be at some point.
Right.
But one of the things that has kind of developed over our conversations is unlocking our potential, right?
Yeah.
So, the original name of this podcast was the Rue Fitness Podcast. And then I wanted to be bigger than that. And we talked about like search words and SEO. So we called it probably the best fitness and nutrition podcast. And then as I evolved, I didn't want this to be limited to fitness and nutrition, because when I look at well-being and health, it is so much more. And a big part of that is our mental health, but not only mental health, but consciousness and developing our full self. And that's where I wanted to take this, and not only take this, but take my life as well, and grow into that area. And so if you're listening to this is the first episode of Potential Unlocked.
Right. And even though I think not everybody thinks of themselves as having life purpose, I think everybody does. And I don't mean in necessarily in sort of conventional, although it's not very conventional, reincarnation terms, like this time you're going to learn about blah blah blah,
Right.
and last time you choked, somebody choked you to death, and it's not so much a serial sense of graduated learning, but I do think there is a quality of resonance that people have when they feel like they're aligned with something about their own sense of self and the world around them. And I think that could very well be understood as a sense of purpose in this world, where when you're in that state of alignment, you're more creative, you're whatever that means for you, relatively speaking. You're not fear-driven. You're more open. And I think unlocking potential then is that same quality that one has when you're in that state of alignment, where you're completely open and you feel like anything that you imagine is possible with you.
Right. Let's start there, really. What are some of the things that you think at the very base level are holding people back from even entering into that conversation with themselves?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, and it comes up all the time. In fact, so much so that people don't even know that there's something blocking them, right? Like they can't even see it.
Right.
A lot of times people refer to this as the fish who doesn't know what water is. It's that reality. And that's probably a good way to put it. I believe that people are in a reality that is limited, that they believe is fixed. Like that's reality. And it can be sometimes externalized in a very powerful way, very big terms, like the man, or
Right.
government, or something where sexism or racism or these big forces that we're dealing with, including even the environment, climate and that kind of thing, so it feels very externalized and big forces. Or it can be very personal, like I will never be happy or in love the way I want to be loved, or I will never have a job that I feel fulfilled in. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, people find themselves in a series of small, tolerable resignations, and so that there's this quality of feeling locked down, stuck. And to imagine unlocking it would mean to go to that place where they have to actually look at themselves. And a lot of people grew up without those tools,
Right.
and so they don't even know they're available. And because they have this sense of reality that, well, that's the way it is, you can't really be bigger than you are. You can't be more successful than you are. You can't be happier than you are, because it's just not your reality. Some parent robbed them of it. Some school situation shamed them of it. There's all these reasons that their reality has kept them at a certain height or capacity. And so when they look at options, they consider only the options that are in that small limited box. And I think it's very challenging. And so when I see people a lot, they're restless, they feel stuck, they don't know quite what to do. But I'll tell you one thing that they have in common is that they feel like whatever they have been doing isn't working anymore.
I find something that's interesting is, and I've only recently, and by recently I mean maybe in the last 3 months, come to terms with this, is that growing up, like the word reality, like I thought there was one reality.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and we share it.
Right, and we share it. It's
Yeah,
a
because
shared
like
reality. So when you see a movie,
yeah, so like you felt it, right? We both agree that I threw a pen and you felt it, right?
So when you see, like when you watch a movie and it talks about alternate realities, like
Yeah.
in my mind all the time it was science fiction that's not legit, right?
Yeah.
But in reality,
I know it gets dicey.
It gets dicey. But we all have our own reality. So the concept of alternate realities is not far-fetched.
Well,
it's true because each person has their own reality.
Absolutely. Don't you
And
remember?
it doesn't make it any less false.
Back to the Sandlot conversations, right?
Right.
Didn't you ever have that thing? Maybe by middle school, you were saying like, "You're just a figment of my imagination." Did you ever hear that kind of thing? Right. And it was this idea that and there was the around the time that I was in middle school, high school. some Eastern philosophy was working its way into our culture more steadily by then, 60s, 70s. I was in the 70s then. And there was the Zen butterfly thing. Like, am I dreaming I'm a butterfly, or am I dreaming I'm a man who, wait, am I a butterfly dreaming of a man, or am I a man dreaming of a butterfly that I'm massacring, right. But you get the idea. That I think that for a long time, we never really questioned the relationship between imagination, consciousness, thought, and reality. But it became more and more evident. I mean, the whole drug breakout happened in the 60s, out of MIT and Berkeley and all that places. And so, and it had always been going on among tribal communities. And so we started to get more of that. But I really feel like, you know what I think was a big push in this? Film? Yeah. People would watch film. I mean, the very first film with the Lumiere brothers, and I think they showed it in a barn, but they had a film on a railroad track, and a train engine is coming, and you can see smoke coming, right. And then it gets closer, and people ran out of the barn. They thought, this is real. It really triggered them. They don't do that now. People stay in the theater when the trains come. But
changed our reality.
Yes, but I do believe that there's something that happens to us the same way it does in dreams. There's something that happens to us in film where we accept that reality, especially with technology the way it is now in film. And now, if you notice also, the subject of films have a lot more to do with alternate reality and consciousness as a subject. Certainly The Matrix. Yeah. But before that, there were films like that. Time change, Inception. That kind of thing. Yes, yeah, Inception. Right, bottle within a bottle within a bottle.
Right.
Oh, even, Star Trek, Next Generation, like the bottle. There was an episode called Bottle Within a Bottle. I'm not a Trekkie, but just want to say that.
I feel like you could be.
I could be. No, I don't. Nope, wasn't.
All right.
But the point, though, is that I feel like things have been changing in consciousness, including social media, where we are living our experiences more and more in our minds, imaginatively. And, so people are always upset, like, they don't get outside enough. Okay, granted, we're not making social contact enough, real physical human contact. But meanwhile, something is happening to our relationship to experience through technology, including film, through conversations which are more and more growing, in which this idea that reality is not the way we thought it was, that is going to make a big difference in a shift, which I hate to sound like
better or for
apps. Well, you know what? We have to let go of better for worse. I don't care about that.
Yeah,
it's a shift. I remember teasing with my kids when we were younger, because the Mars mission was just getting started, and they were talking about how long it was going to get to Mars and all the problems. I mean, they were in middle school, these kids,
right?
Smart kids though, and so they had a lot to say about it. And I proposed that we don't have to change how fast we get to Mars; we just have to change where we think Mars is. And that they played with that for a while, but after a couple of years, in fact, recently, my oldest son was talking to me about his job and his bills, and taking care of his pet and a relationship he had. And, he was like struggling with everything. And he goes, and don't tell me we just have to change where we think Mars is. That's bullshit. Okay. so, there was something about dealing with surviving in this reality that makes that alternate reality a little less accessible. But I really do think that change in consciousness is coming. I see it all the time, and I'm very excited about it.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So I feel like more and more we're going to understand that reality is that the reality that you experience, the reality that I experience, is a product of our consciousness, the way we think about it. And I think that the reason we share that reality is because we share some of the constructs in the way we think.
Well, that's what I was going to kind of talk about before, though, is that if we all start to realize that there are multiple realities, your reality is your reality, my reality is my reality, then those realities can be changed instead of just being, that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Or no?
Yeah, but so then how do we coexist with multiple realities? So you have your reality, I have mine, we're walking side by side, and do we both still see the bus cross, stopped at the corner? How is it that happens in your mind?
It's a bottle within a bottle.
So are you experiencing the bus within my reality, or am I experiencing it within your reality? Why do we have the shared experience?
They both exist.
Okay, so is the bus real?
To us, that it is.
Is it not real in other ways? How is it not real?
The bus could not be real in someone who hasn't experienced the bus crossing its path.
You mean like if a tree falls and there's no one there to hear it? I'm thinking more of, like when a lot of people talk about you can create your own reality, they say, yeah, walk through that wall. Like that's the big test. Like, oh, yeah? Walk on water. Get a little Jesus thing going here. And I don't know.
Well, can't both be true that we have this shared reality but also have our own reality?
Yeah, have you sorted that out? I mean, how are you sorting that out? What do you do about that?
It's a little bit of acceptance and control in terms of that. I guess this is going to be an oversimplification, but accepting our responsibility and our own situations while knowing that by accepting that acceptance or that responsibility,
sure,
we have the power to change our reality.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. I mean, recently, right? I did some things to think that I was going to push our fitness product in the future. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to be cutting edge. We're going to do some stuff.
Like a marketing strategy.
Not a marketing strategy,
right.
Like how we approach fitness.
A paradigm shift. Kind of.
Yeah, paradigm shift.
Got it.
And it was going to revolutionize, and I mean, it still is, but how I approach it is different, right? So I didn't think through the steps in order to be taken. Let me back it up. I'm the type of guy that's like 0 to 100. So when I want to do something, it's like, we're doing it now, right? And this was not a situation that needed to be done now. It needed to be parsed out over time, slowly. And I didn't take the time to see that. And so, long story short, like, I kind of fractured our gym and our product by doing that. And for a while, like, I blamed it on a lot of other things. And then once I accepted that, hey, I did this, right? Made me realize that I have the power to undo it, or not necessarily undo it, but fix it or mend it or keep heading in the direction I want to head in, but do it in a way that, it's kind of like re-entering the atmosphere in a space shuttle. If you hit the wrong angle and at the wrong speed, you burn everything up.
Yeah, or you bounce back out into space.
Right. And so it's hitting right angle, right speed.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a course correction. A little bit.
And you are associating ownership with your ability to be in that state and manage it the way you want to, or create it the way you want to.
Yeah, I mean, look, it could be like anything. It could be like, my separation and my divorce, right? There's a lot of things I could blame it on, but there's a lot of things I can blame on myself, right? And knowing that allows you to heal a little bit faster and grow. But that could be anything, like your nutrition situation, your fitness situation, your job situation, your relationship with your family or your sister,
absolutely,
or your parents. It's accepting, like, what did I have? What role did I play in this situation? Rather than constantly blaming it on other people.
Right. I think ownership in a subsequent session. I think we'll talk a lot about ownership. I think that one of the keys to being alive and creative and free in your reality is the degree to which you realize you own it.
Yeah.
However, I want to back up just a step to sort of give us a bit of a capsule to set that in, or a little crucible maybe to boil it in. Is that I think that if we go back to the question of how do we share it?
Well, part of that. What I was going to say is how to tie that together. What I just talked about is, we had at the time this all happened, we had, had 14 coaches and 250 members, right? And now we're like 135 and 6 coaches, right? But at the time, if you look, the facts that happened, right?
Yeah.
The things that happened. And they're very definitive, like, okay, this happened at this time, along the way, steps along the way, right? But how that's viewed by those 250 people are 250 viewpoints.
Absolutely.
Right? And so what I'm saying is that there's my reality, but there's 249 other realities that happen. Now, there are major points that happened along the way, which is a shared reality. But I guess I am tying in viewpoints and perception to reality. I think
that's a great segue to the capsulization that I was talking about. And that is that one of the things that, in terms of shared reality, is there are a couple of characteristics about reality in this sharing. For example, when I threw the pen at you, we said, well, did you believe I threw a pen? Yes. Did you feel the pen? Yes. We both felt the pen, right? I felt it differently because I threw it at you. You had to feel the power of my throwing. I'm sure it was very hard for you. You took it very well.
It was difficult.
On camera. It hurt, I know. But anyway, so what's interesting, though, is that in those, one of the characteristics of that, one of the true deep core characteristics of that experience is that we believe reality is separate from us. In order for it to be fixed, that we can share it, it has to be separate from us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right? In other words, the quality of a shared, fixed, immutable reality is that it's got to be separate from us. And so when we look to reality, when we look at ourselves in reality, very often we're wondering, how do we negotiate with this separate entity, this reality? And by the way, that includes the millions and billions of people in the world, but it also includes bears and trees and tidal tides and the moon and everything out there, even rocks, right? All of this has a relationship to us, and we're negotiating with it all the time. And when we're negotiating with it, what we're really talking about is what we're trying to get from reality for us. And that includes anything from sustenance, which makes sense, right? It's hard to argue that. Safety and security, or some type of pleasure. We avoid pain from reality, like how it creates pain for us. And so this understanding of what we're trying to get or avoid from reality, I think, is part of the shared construct that we have. So when we are looking to reality as a separate thing that we are negotiating with, it's very easy for us to have a shared experience of that, because we share not so much the reality, but those same needs like survival, and we're worried about some of those same things. I think one of the first things to do is to recognize that if reality is not separate from us, then what do we need from it? Maybe nothing. Maybe once we stop looking at what reality is going to offer us, or what we think we can get from it, or what we have to pay and negotiate to get those things, once that's gone, it's almost like somebody saying, you're asking the wrong questions. You know that right. Kind of saying that when we let go of a separate reality, built into that separate reality, parenthetically, remind you, is this idea that we're negotiating with it. When we let go of reality being separate, we no longer have this need to negotiate with it. It's ours. And we have a different relationship to its outcomes, to the resources in it, where we get money from, all these kind of things. I think that the shift in consciousness that I'm talking about and we've been sharing here, yeah, is, even at a social level, is that we're no longer going to be negotiating with reality, but creating what we want. In very many ways, it's almost impossible to imagine what that is, not because we don't have the imagination that a filmmaker has to bring us back to that realm, because we can see it and go like, wow, cool. Or to quote Keanu Reeves, whoa. But in The Matrix, on top of the roof. Right, thank you. All right, so.
There. I'm a big Matrix guy.
Except he said it much better.
Where we also disagree is that I actually enjoyed the last Matrix.
You mean the most recent one?
Yeah. I thought you didn't like it.
You
didn't like it.
I didn't.
It's all right. Easy.
Okay. There's only the one Matrix. There's only the one Star Wars, the first one. But anyway, so what I was going to say though is that that when we no longer live within the construct of a separate reality in which we're negotiating and taking from and giving to or giving up in order to do that, it changes the paradigm more than anything you can think of. And one of the things that I think make it difficult for us to actually let go of that relationship to a shared independent reality is that we're afraid that if we do, we won't get what we need in order to survive or to be happy. So if I were to say to you, hey, let's not have a shared independent immutable reality. Let's go there. You're like on the Sandlot. If I had your eyes,
right.
Let's just take this all the way. I think that it would be incredibly difficult for people to make that paradigm shift because it would mean giving up whatever chance they have to make this work to their advantage. And I think that's where the crux is in this paradigm shift potential.
That theme of letting go of that and just creating.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of the overarching theme, not only in our sessions, right?
Yeah.
In our men's group that we have as well.
Yep.
Is that something you view that most people need, or that's what society needs to be elevated?
God, I love and hate that question. I I sit on the sort of the high wire of that question all the time. Mm-hmm. My idealistic reaction is, yeah, everybody needs it. They want it. They should have it. Right. I don't think, though, that's really true. I mean, I just think that there are a lot of people for whom, and it's fine when I think of it this way, that they're not asking those questions. It's like the same people that I was suggesting don't really say, what's my life purpose? That it's where they are is fine. And I don't really want to disturb that. I don't want to drag people into this new paradigm.
It's almost like this is what someone needs when they need it.
When they're ready for it.
When they're ready for it.
Yeah, and
right?
how do they know? That's really good, because when they know, it's because, as I said, they are frustrated with the futility of their behavior.
Or they had a traumatic event and they're looking to heal.
Or they had trauma and they don't. And again, the normal ways that they negotiate with reality in this trauma case, whatever it is for them, isn't working. In other words, it's the mechanics of that relationship to an independent reality are no longer working. That's when they come to me. That's when I find resonance with people, is when they're at the state where they're going like, something's not working. And for a lot of people that might just say, what's interesting is that they come and they say, just help me get it back to the way it was. And I'm not in that business. I appreciate it, and I'll even walk a bit down that path. But knowing that as soon as we, back to the Matrix, take the red pill versus the blue pill, there's no going back. Like once you've opened your eyes, now you're into this new place.
Yeah, it's like once you get a glimpse of what, as I call it, being free.
Yeah.
It's hard to go backwards.
It is. Some people do, though. Like
is that fear?
Yeah. I used to work with, because I was a musician originally, and I started working with people in this thing called performance practice, where they would work with me so that they could improve their relationship to their instrument, to the music, to their performance. And by the way, these are people who are already incredibly well established in the music classical world, mm-hmm. right? And so let's say I have 20 people in the first 2 years. And when they start working with me in the very beginning, so let's say there's going to be, for terms of just conversation, for hypothetically 8 sessions. So in the first, second, and third session, the letting go of your orientation to results, whatever it is euphoric. It's this ecstatic, like, oh, this is why I was in music in the first place.
Right.
And they start practicing differently and so forth. About third or fourth session, certainly by the fourth session, at least half of, more, would come to me and say, I'm really having trouble with this. Why? Because I've lost my sense of whether I'm good or not. Because that quality of being good out in that world, that fixed, separate reality, is based on a whole bunch of constructs that they were being invited to let go of. And they would experience a euphoric sense of relationship to their music and to themselves, but they would have to give up what they thought, give up this sense of whether or not they're good anymore. It was really traumatic for these people. And of them, half let go of the program. I can't give that up. This has been great. I've learned some things, but I can't afford to let go of that relationship I have with a separate reality.
I'm gonna turn this conversation a little bit, just because this is making me feel something that recently happened to me.
Okay.
One of the things, well, you and I have been working on this very subject for quite some time, right?
What is, say it again, what the exact subject is that you're talking about?
Us being free of like societal reality.
Yeah.
Okay. And that we can just create
which I'm saying is based on a separate reality.
Right. People's heads are exploding right now on the podcast, but so the part of that was, we talked a lot about my nutrition, right?
Yeah.
Or like the sacrifices that I make in order to do what I do, which is, I weigh and track my food all the time.
Anyway, and those who are watching the video, they can see us comparatively. I am a big, heavy, fat guy. And,
COVID got you.
Right. And yet we still have this relationship in which we talk about the value and the quality of this breakthrough.
Right.
All right. So it's interesting that
you remember for this conversation, bring it.
But just to state the obvious, that what's interesting about this is that you are fixed in a nutritional fitness plan. You're getting a breakthrough from somebody who is absolutely not on that track. Know,
what I began to wonder is, like, why am I doing all this, right? Like, why am I so fixated on what does having an 8-pack mean to me as a person?
Yeah. I used to have a 6-pack, but now I have a keg, which I think is more beer for everybody.
It is more beer.
Okay, so anyway.
So
but back to your really important question.
Why am I so regimented with this in order to have this 8-pack? And some people think I'm obsessive about it. I'm not. Like, do I enjoy having it? Yes. The alternative was, when I didn't, I felt self-conscious about myself. Now I don't feel self-conscious about myself. But the amount of work I put in, actually, I think the conversation was this: how much time a day do you spend thinking about it? Thinking about it.
And managing
it, which was the majority of my day.
Mm-hmm.
And your question to me was, if you spent less time thinking about it and managing it, what else could you do for society or for yourself with that time?
Yeah.
Would it serve you better?
Can I just interrupt really quickly about that? One thing that I think when anyone is when that question is brought up to somebody, I think one of the hardest things about answering that question is, you can think of it in terms of, if I let go of that, what space would I create for other things? But to let go of that, we engage in these routines. In this case, for you, we engage in these things not just out of curiosity or whim. They're life and death. I mean, especially when they become as consuming as yours has. Like, so there's obviously something in you that believes this is necessary in order for you to arrive or be something about yourself that you've imagined. The 8-pack is built into it. And it's not just, and I think you're much more sophisticated than just saying because it's attractive or it's a social gesture or iconic thing. No, there's something. It meant something to you deep down. I remember talking about it with you, that you're not just being asked to give up. Come on, stop worrying about it so much. This is life and death. It's like, it would be like saying to somebody on on some type of oxygen mask or something like that, where they need it, they can't breathe on their own. Just give up the breathing apparatus.
Well, yeah,
I can't give it up.
And so I had thought long and hard about that, and I had started to, I for lack of a better term, say, just be happy with my current state.
Yeah.
Okay, and just operate from like a baseline level of happiness, which I'm going to worry less about my nutrition. So I use Mardi Gras, okay, basically 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of carnival season, to operate under that premise. So like, let's say I've been weighing and tracking my food for 2 full years, okay?
Yeah.
Out of the last 14 days leading into Mardi Gras.
Starting with Mid-City.
The 14 days leading into Mardi Gras Day.
Yeah.
I tracked 2-3 out of those 14 days, and the other ones I didn't. I just ate. Okay?
And how was that?
It was fine until it wasn't.
Until the results came in?
It wasn't results.
What was it? What do you mean it wasn't?
I guess results could be how I felt, right? And I mean, I still take progress pictures, so I still did weigh-ins. I still took my progress photos. Progress photos looked pretty good, but I started to feel a sense of spiraling out of control. The further I got from the daily routine, or management of my nutrition, and fitness, the more I felt like life was unraveling.
Yeah, but the exciting question there is to say that I'm spiraling out of control. In a conversation with most people, if you admit that you're spiraling out of control, they go like, yeah, get a job. Yes. Stay with the relationship. Right. Yes. Get back on your diet. Yes. In other words, they were spiraling out of control as a bad thing. And people have accepted control as a means to negotiate with reality, for example, since I'm trying to keep it in that theme.
Yeah.
So when you say spiraling out of control, it's almost as if, to a lot of people, maybe even to yourself at the time, it's almost as if that remark is an indication that something's not working.
Yeah,
right. Exactly, right? And that's when you said it was until it wasn't. And that's what you're referring to, that it wasn't working anymore because of this feeling of spiraling out of control. But to play it for the other side now is that if we believe that we're doing everything we can to negotiate with this separation of reality, to survive, very often the tool that we use is controlling that environment as much as we can. And even your body is separate from you in that case. Like, I'm controlling, that's the thing, out of all of the world, the thing that I have most control over, if I need it, is my body. Like some people control the people in their office. Some people control, where they live, so they have a certain temperature and atmosphere. But you're controlling if I put it in these terms.
Yes.
Okay. You're controlling your body as a means of controlling reality. In other words, you're separating from your body. And you're saying, I can control my body. What part of you is controlling your body? What part of you is not your body? What that relationship, spinning out of control, suddenly illuminates a much more extraordinary relationship to reality than the one that says, I'm managing, it's okay, or like I'm doing well. And I think that's that breaking point in which people are invited to recognize not only that spinning out of control is still part of that fixed reality that's limited and not as creative, That if every time you're about to break out into a creative freedom and you go like, whoa, 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 I have to give up control? No, I'm sorry.
Right.
Is there any way I can do that and still have my control? It's difficult. But I think that what we're talking about here is just in hearing your description of what happened is that you're describing the negotiation that you and many, many, many people have with something separate from them in order to manage it. And it's an invitation to let go of that. It's not so much to say, how do I get control back and get free? It's about saying, wait, why do I feel I'm losing control? What's this control thing that's going on with me?
Well, it's almost like if I'm looking at it, right? Let's say during that time frame, look, we live in New Orleans. We think about food. I think about food often. Do you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. So I think most of us think about food often, right? Yeah. So if I thought about like, let's say a pie chart of the amount of time I spent.
What an interesting selection of words.
It was not haphazardly chosen.
Okay.
But let's say we have a pie chart of the amount of time I think or spend when it comes to my nutrition.
Right?
Yeah. And let's say 3 weeks ago, that pie chart, we have, it looks like Pacman. Right. 85% of my day is spent, and this is
funny. You should use the analogy of Pacman as well. That part that isn't thinking about food is eating. You can't get away from this eating thing.
So let's say 85% of my day is managing and thinking about nutrition. Right. Well, let's drop it down to Wednesday or Thursday post Mardi Gras. Like I'm trying to recover out of it, and I am still thinking about my food. Let's say 60% of the time, so 25% drop, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, that 25% extra time is now not all of a sudden put towards creative thought process or me being free. It's freaking out about
it's trying to recover the loss of the control you had before.
So it's almost like when I spend 85% of my time, and again, these guys, this is false percentages. I'm just throwing
No, it makes sense.
Right. When I think 85% of that time, the 15% of free time I do have is I'm able to fully give towards that.
Yeah, but you are absolutely describing that tipping point.
Yes.
That tipping point where do I regain control or does something else happen? And this is, I have to say, when I met Anya Lincoln, who's she created this whole identity work thing. It made it so much easier for me to see what's really going on beneath that. In the duality of your options, you either have, at this point, you were playing, you said, I'm going to be free. I'm going to create. I'm not going to think about stuff. But in the reality that you had, the duality was this. I either can be free, but lose my APAC. And more importantly, it's not really the APAC we're talking about anymore. We're talking about losing control, right? Or I can be in control and give up some of my creativity. Maybe I can be creative in that control paradigm somehow, more creative, right? But the unfortunate thing is that we see this as, well, these are my options. And we see them as the only options we have. And that's because there's some thought-based reality at the core of this that says that's the way reality is, and those are the only options you have. And so talking to somebody about when you present this and go, well, I either have this or I have that. Yeah, that's all you have in that reality. And there's a way to chase that conundrum, that duality, down its rabbit hole to find out what is this reality that you're living in that gives you only those options. And you're not alone in that. I mean, I think this is really common.
So we got to wrap it up here in about 5 minutes. And we're gonna continue on this conversation. We're gonna keep going with this. What is like the first 1 or 2 steps people can take towards that?
You mean that thought that's generating that reality?
Yes. Because I know I'm not the only person that's
Yeah. That's a great question, and I think that what I'm about to say, what those first steps are, I just want to set it up a little bit to say that sometimes evoking these steps, like participating in these steps, is so simple that we don't give it credit for where it's taking us, and we tend to go like, no, I'm going to back out and do this other thing. But the first step I think we have is to no longer see reality happening to us. So you would look at your situation and you would say, now this is where it's clever for you, because you were saying, no, it's my body. So there's a part of you that could get away with pretending that this is you doing this. But if you think about it, what role does your body have in spinning out of control? Not your mind, your body.
It doesn't. It's a byproduct of it's like a symptom.
What made you feel you were spinning out of control? How did you know?
Well, I felt blah.
That's the part I'm talking about. In other words, the body said to you, blah.
Right.
And you said, I don't want that feeling. Right. So in other words, if you're separate from your body and listen, blah could be something that...
Well, it could be energy levels. Or it could
be, right. Here's the tricky part about this, Bradley, is that it's hard to argue against good energy, right? It's hard to argue against feeling fit and not
Empowered.
fit. Feeling like you have the energy to do something, right? It's when we attach control to it, and I'm spinning out of control because I feel blah, is different than saying, I want to get my energy back. It's the quality that we're looking at with you is not blah. It's the feeling that I can't let that happen. It's that part that we're really interested in. And it's really important to surgically separate those. Do you understand what I'm trying to
yes.
say? Okay. So the first step is to look for those places where we feel
it's not associating those two.
Or that their association is more coincidental or convenient than it is literal and dogmatic.
Right.
Okay. So the first step is to look at those places where we feel reality is happening to us and recognize those as a big, big part of our bartering with reality, or like, what do you feel like you have to give up in order to get that control of reality back? You have to give up king cakes or something, I don't know, right? Or drinking or whatever it is. I'm thinking Mardi Gras, so I don't know.
For me, it's eating at will.
Okay, eating at will, right. Eating at whim, almost,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
At whim. In other words, give up the control of when and how you eat.
With no thought behind it.
Right. Is going to create a relationship to reality that you don't want. And by the way, we're talking about a relationship to your body, which I am suggesting you have separated from. Okay, it's something you're controlling. Okay, that's step number one. And what you do with that is that it gives you pause to not be hijacked by the conversation that we typically have when we're negotiating with reality. It just stops things. You're like, wait. I feel like reality is doing this to me. And then there are places to go after that, which is going to be step number two. But that's how it starts. Step number two, given just that first step, step number two would be to chase that experience as if it's a trigger that's making us feel like we have to react to it. Mm-hmm. You felt like, I got to get back on my routine. Like, I got to gain my control back. Whatever that trigger is to examine that in inquiry, and it can be really simple. Like, how do I feel when I feel not blah necessarily, but I feel I have to do something about it? What does that feel like? What happens if I don't do that? What will happen to me? And then that line of questioning, where we look at the feeling, what it is we're trying to prevent, what feeling we're trying to prevent, that gives us access to a driver which is beneath the eating. It's something beneath that. And that's where you go. So the first two steps are to recognize, I'm thinking that reality is happening to me. I'm almost like a victim of it. And we can blame ourselves for it because we want to control it. We'll say like, no, it's me. I lost my diet. I have to get back on. But it's happening to us. Like my body is spinning out of control. I let go of my control, and now this is what happens. Right? So we feel like we have to give up something. We're negotiating with it, and we get hijacked by that conversation. Most people don't even give themselves the awareness of what that feels like.
People down.
It does, yeah. And ironically,
they don't go anywhere.
They don't go, and they eat more. They become less energetic, and it's a cycle. That's hard. So the first step is to stop that presumption that we're separate from reality and it's happening to us. Once you stop that, once that's held and you can look at it, you can then examine some of the deeper feelings and consequences so you don't react, but you're just looking at why you think you need to react, and you chase that as far as you can. And that's a process, but it's actually really simple. It's just not easy all the time because we're dealing with letting go of our control. I think control is a big, big, big deal in that negotiated reality. I know. It's and if I could just give a sneak peek. What's interesting is that it's so easy to talk about this in terms of, well, how can I be happier in my world and still kind of keep it in the construct of, the reality that exists out there that we're both accepting. All right. It's like if I do breathing, if I do meditation, if I do these things, you're going to have a much better navigational experience of this separate reality. And you could say, look, I'm actually believing that I'm in control, or I'm creating this reality. But I can't tell you how many people accept that practice still under the dome of, but really it's a separate reality, and come on, you and I know that. There's some part that's hanging on to that. And the radical thing that we're really talking about here is as radical as saying, so walk through the wall. In other words, to really let go of this is to completely free oneself into creating this reality in which they're alive, unlocking their full potential. And that means different things for different people. It doesn't mean you have to save, African warring between countries, or, starvation in lines.
Ukraine.
Right. It's not about those things. It doesn't mean that we don't participate in them, but we approach them from a very different place. Social change from this place of creating reality is phenomenal. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Otherwise, we just end up creating more wars. We think we're fixing something, but we're creating the duality over again. So that's the radical change that I think we're really looking at, is a way in which each of us as individuals, that thing about, that's a million different viewpoints. Imagine entering into the arena of social injustice, not from the place of I need to change the outside reality so it's safe for me to be in it, but I'm going to change my relationship to that reality so it's not separate from me. What then is available to you as a creative being moving in that arena? It absolutely has effect on that social realm. And I think that's where we're going to see real change in consciousness, is how it affects our society. And then it won't be that everybody has to say, yes, I have purpose and I want to change my concept of reality and consciousness. It will just become sort of an opportunity that people feel invited into.
I love it. Every time, Will.
Well, fun first session.
Yeah, fun first session, guys. Look for many more of these. We hope you enjoyed it. Will, you on social media? Instagram? You got an Instagram?
No, I don't.
No. All right.
I that's something I was just thinking about last night, by the way. But no, I'm not, I don't know, but I do have a web page. But
yeah. All right. Where can they find your web page?
William McGreal.
All right.
Or Will McGreal.
WillMcGreal.com. Will McGreal. Yeah. If you are in search of beginning this journey of freeing yourself from these,
I would also recommend Anya's book too, as another good way. There it is. You have it.
There it is. It is I Am. A Guide to Transforming Reality by Anya Linking and Creating the Life You Want. So check it out. And if you are in need of help to escape whatever situation you are in, or be able to grow into a place where it doesn't affect you,
then call in to our podcast.
Or check out Will.
Or check out my website.
Check out his website.
All right,
y'all. Appreciate it. Peace out.